ended. That's the heartbreak that comes when you're in these knockout stages. That is what is on the line for both of these teams. The win would be a phenomenal, historical result, but only one of them can have it.
So much to play for and so much yet still to lose, but both teams can be proud of their achievements so far. Well, that's not what they're looking for here. They're both looking for victory. They're both looking for blood, and right now the gates are about to open. It's got to be that GOATS composition on both sides, but I want to comment here. Paddy Pan is going to start in the May.
This is what Xavier have been doing. We're calling it GOATS in the shell because it's the bulk of a GOATS comp, and then Paddy Pan flexes onto something else. And
That's
this
what
is
it
a
does.
beautiful read. The main to counter out the GOATS is exceptional. Already blasting ice through these tanks, cooling them off and chilling the momentum of CAG's own GOATS comp with that Xavier with just the one kill, have all the positioning.
And in the narrow hallways of Control Center as well, the wall is so effective, locking out Samurai, getting themselves an early pick. The cap is now coming through, and it has not been stopped.
And there's the lockout again to catch Samurai to finish him off. Now it's starting to be a clean sweep for Xavier. Popping Anakin out of the mech. This main pick is really dynamite.
It's able to feed a lot of these ultimates on the other members as well. Queen and Cyclops God now both have these tank ultimates. Nano Boost coming up available as well. Rally not that far off from THK. Xavier currently running away with this game, and it's CAG that are forced to adapt Anakin onto the Pharah.
And this is kind of what we expected. This is why we said don't count Xavier out. This particular style of gameplay, like I said, it's just really been amazing for them in these last few weeks of the competition. That's just continuing now into playoffs.
Step 1 is complete here. Dodge that wall, but step 2, they have to be able to dodge the double tank ultimates. Can CAG do that? That's very important.
And there's going to be a blizzard to contend with as well. Anakin gets picked out of the air by an icicle. Now they're all getting cooled off in the blizzard. There's going to be the closeout of the kills with that as well. But with that, they've drained a lot out of Xavier. CAG maybe for the first time can come in with a real shot.
They lost Anakin so early there as well. You can imagine if Anakin stayed alive, he survives the blizzard, he doesn't get caught in that Graviton Surge as well. The counter damage would have been there for CAG, but that just wasn't the case. Xavier still maintained control of the point. They still tick up. They're up to 65% now.
CAG, they do need to get time. They've got the right idea with this team comp, but it takes time for it to really come into effect, and they are playing a bit of that ultimate catch-up.
They need to be able to get past this wall once again, and the Earthshatter is still available. It's actually Xavier aggressing in first.
Yeah, it's a good call. Charge in. Knocked down, though, is Queen. He's going to be just fine for the time being. Samurai's Earthshatter didn't quite connect. Now with the Nano Boost out, looking to get in their own right there again. The wall dodge, but Samurai is low. They're trying to buy that time for Anakin to just buff it away at these tanks. They've weathered the ultimate storm, and now they start to get the kills. They catch THK, but they lose Anakin and Claire too. Here's some more ultimates coming out now. Ken Mahororo blocked by the wall. Excellent quick thinking by Patapan, and now Ken Mahororo finds himself stuck still and killed off Xavier, looking to 100-0 Control Center.
That's the GOATS composition, the 3-3 coming out from Xavier Esports with the addition of the May. That is so powerful for this team. CAG now don't have enough members. They're trying so hard, but what can they do?
Nothing is the answer. CAG trying to make the adaptation, not able to make it work. They should have expected this. This is what Xavier have been running. This is what they've been winning on. This is why they are in this semi-final. CAG, if they can't beat it now, they're going to have to figure it out before the end of the series.
It's already looking like a slow start for Cyclops Athlete Gaming. It does get you a little bit worried, but we are moving past Control Center. So for Xavier Esports, they are going to be forced to run something a little bit different. And also for Cyclops Athlete Gaming, they get to play Dip on Widowmaker again. They get to play Anakin onto a Pharah, where he does have room to play with. He isn't confined to the narrow spaces of Control Center. This has to be a favored map for CAG.
Truly, if nowhere else. And this is again Xavier playing that same team composition. This time Patapan flexes out onto the Tracer. They're wanting to play with those flanks, with those angles, with those more open spaces.
That's also Xavier expecting a dive. Note that THK started onto a Brigida as well, but it's Patapan that wants to start onto the back line.
Goes for pressure, doesn't quite connect it. Savagod, though, goes down in the dive as they're able to follow it up. Now CAG having to pull back, trying to push back, getting Tay off with the concussive mine there, or concussive blast, rather. Whatever it's called. Patapan goes down as well, so CAG is starting to push back. Point still not actually being capped over, even though it's been unlocked. Both teams have boots on it, and it is CAG winning the fight.
And it's also Xavier being a very quick team. Note how quickly they dived in initially, but CAG have wisened up to that tactic. They back off just a little bit, allow their poke damage to come through, and as soon as it does, they pick up kills. When they get kills, they get more kills. Look at the CAG, or rather the Xavier health bars. They're just always so low. Anakin doing a ton of damage, gets the first ultimate of the game.
And that's where this Pharaoh really shines. That's why it is, once again, the right call here. A great answer. And this is what it could have been on Control Center. They just didn't have enough time on it.
Also didn't have enough space to play with, and now CAG have all the space in the world, forcing Xavier to come through the narrow choke. That's where Anakin likes to play. That's where Anakin gets a lot of damage done.
Is respecting the defense matrix from Sage and God, but they've given up a lot of ground for free, waiting out this coalescence. Anakin coming around the backside, looking for the angle. Doesn't actually catch anyone. They separate the team. No, gets Patapan right at the back side of the fight. They were able to catch some of the split up members of Xavier to hold out the point for longer.
And the silver lining there is, despite Anakin getting a little bit of a slow rocket barrage, he's actually allowed the rest of his team to collect the kills instead. That's actually going to allow the rest of his team to charge their ultimates a little bit faster. So ultimately, it would kind of work in CAG's favor in a funny kind of way.
Yeah, funny because, you know, ultimately, great pun. But Xavier, speaking of ultimates, do actually come in with a few more coming off cooldown. CAG are a little ways from their most high impact ultimates.
Patapan also onto this Widowmaker, felt the challenge from Depp and wants to be able to answer it. But needs to be able to answer quickly.
You feel that one, and especially now as Queen gets a primal rage that Samurai would have been so far away from. That spells good news for Xavier, but the picks come through. Sabagod playing Sniper, Dip too. Man, I love Zenyatta's. Even trading one back as he got picked by Patapan. And with that, so Xavier, they do cap the point over. But CAG are really winning this fight. I feel like it's only a matter of time until they wrest control back. And that was Xavier blowing all of their cooldown.
They haven't stopped losing members. Justin Anakin gets another kill onto Queen. And for Xavier Esports, they're just trying to bleed members in, maybe collect a little bit more in terms of progress, but they are losing so many members, feeding so many ults to the opposite side, and CAG will once again inevitably can take control.
Even using that rocket barrage isn't too big a deal here. You consider Sabagod's pretty close to another Transcendence, so the rest of the team has got everything coming up off cooldown. Can't say the same for Xavier. And again, it is just a matter of time.
Patapan.
Props to Xavier pushing this up to about 40%, actually still stalling it up further with Queen, but by the time Xavier are able to come in for a full push at all 6, CAG are going to have all their ultimates.
That's kind of the trade that you have to make if you're Xavier Esports. You get 47%. But you probably give at least 47% in terms of ultimates to every single member on the CAG side. THK already off the map. It's a big oh no because there's 85% in CAG's favor. They're about to hit the overtime.
Patapan showing solidarity with that one as well. I think maybe they were actually caught in a bit of a tough position, weren't going to be able to regroup with the team, so
Take
now
the easy
out the
option
gate.
out.
Yeah. Oh, good shot on depth, but instant bite back. Thittercorn going for a res. Getting the hurt put on him. Claire reses Depp, and Queen not so lucky as they dive for the point. Sage and God, the lone tank, is already out of the mech. Patapan off the edge again. I think this time to a recall. That is really bad news. I don't think anyone's going to get on this for much longer out of Xavier. Anakin with the final rocket barrage of what will be this control, Gardens. Even with the kill coming through, Xavier lacking the members, lacking the ultimates, and CAG going to even it up on these young.
If you actually noticed there, the pulse pump was onto Sabagod. He uses the Transcendence, and I do believe he actually ran that pulse pump back into Patapan, which is where that suicide came from. So whether he jumped off the map or not, fact is there's been a lot of members on the Xavier side. They're not even able to get kills. In fact, they're killing themselves on a number of occasions as well. That was a very big map for CAG. Constantly in their favor. You do want to give Xavier props for being able to flip it over, getting as much progress as they did. But the win condition was always very clear for CAG, and now it's 1-1 on Lijiang Tower. Night Market is where it comes down to.
And this is the one I'm most excited about, because it's good for GOATs, which is what Xavier are running, but it's also good for Pharaoh, which is what CAG have been running to counter the GOATs. This is a true clash.
And look at this, it's Xavier once again running 5 members you'd expect in that GOATs composition, and then Patapan onto something different. The Sombra is the pick right now, and he wants to be able to challenge Depp, and that's something he can do. Go invisible behind him, go for the 1v1, you should look to win.
And there it is, though they are expecting
a bodyguard.
Would exactly pull someone back to help Depp out. They've got a bouncer for that club. Theticorn taking some hurt as Anakin starts to do the work with the rockets. That means CAG have got control of the ground.
What it does say that they're really respecting Depp right now, and you shouldn't have to. He's done a lot of damage, and Anakin's doing even more. There's that first kill from Depp, and finally THK takes him down.
Yeah, it's a trade, but it's a favorable one for CAG because, again, the damage coming out from Anakin, he's got a rocket barrage, and Xavier do lose Sage and God on the approach to this point. So now at a member's deficit, having a hard time in this fight. If Anakin can preserve this rocket barrage, they can win the fight without it, which they may just know. Hacked out, too close to the ground, and Queen collects that one. This is Xavier starting to fight back. It's not easy, it's not smooth. Whereas on Anakin, maybe changes that tune, especially with Queen so low. They channel the rocket barrage to ensure that they cap the point.
I was going to say they need the rocket barrage to actually win this because they're getting kills kind of slow. That's not too unexpected. There's a lot of high health bars on the Xavier side. As soon as the res came in, the barrage came out. They weren't going to make the same mistake twice. Now they do have to contend with this EMP on the Patty Pan side. And Depp goes on to his third hero of the stage so far. It is going to be the Hanzo. Decided not to sound to Doomfist. Probably a smart idea considering there is a Sombra on the field.
Speaking of Sombra, looking in for that EMP,
nice hack.
Finds the hack in the air, drops down, pops the EMP on the rest, and now Xavier take the fight in earnest. Samurai did at least get the Primal Rage earlier, but without those leaps, he's essentially a sit and duck, just a very angry one. They commit a res, they've got the point now, it's on CAG to answer back somehow. Kenma Hororo back in the mech, and would you believe it, Anakin's got another rocket barrage, he's going to need it to counter out this Earth Shatter. No, doesn't find the members, they all flee the point to catch those that were caught in the Earth Shatter. It's only Patapan the casualty so far.
You're hoping that would be the turnaround, and now it's going to be Xavier continuing to get progress here. It is the Graviton Surge, but they're actually losing members. Sergeant God already goes down.
Yeah, they do pop Kenma Hororo out of the mech, but it's Xavier losing more than what they're gaining in this situation. Though I will concede they are gaining that point progress now, just about evened up, but it is CAG winning the fight, capping it back.
And it is a major difference from what we saw into Gardens, which was CAG running away with far more progress. Xavier eventually capping it back slowly, but it took them a very long time. Now it's very comparable, 41% to 34. It's not a huge lead, and CAG need time to extend that to make it a huge lead.
Depp catches Patty Pan. That's probably just another fight Xavier can't afford to take, and it's more time CAG can finish charging these ultimates that will put them at a huge advantage.
And THK is trying to respond on this Widowmaker as well. Wants to put pressure onto Anakin, but now allows Depp to counter snipe him. So there's a lot of pressure onto THK instead. Alleviate some of that by taking down his counterpart. This might open up the push for Xavier.
It means Anakin is just that much more vulnerable, and that's to say nothing of the other members on the ground. This is Xavier starting to look a little bit more back on form. Rez on Samurai, CAG are committing to this fight, but they're still losing members even as they try and rescue a few, and they're not actually getting kills back. Kenma Hororo nearly got back in the mech, and with that Xavier have the critical mass, I think, to win the fight out and cap the point over.
Well, it depends how many more kills can come up because the EMP has been forced as two members went down for Xavier.
They're keeping in this one, though. They've actually killed off Patapan, and even though Xavier had a huge members advantage and the EMP, they didn't quite close out these last few minutes.
Overtime.
CAG reinforced, and now they're at an advantage in the overtime. 99 to 34. Xavier, there's no one there. No, just barely getting a boot on the ground, but cloudy with a chance of justice is the weather forecast as CAG finish off Night Market, finish off the 2-1 reverse sweep on control, and they draw first blood in this semi-final.
Getting that 1-0 is so important for CAG into this series, but that was a close scare coming out from the other side. Patty Pan onto the May was so effective on that opening control center map as well. A 100-0 that Xavier absolutely deserved. They heavily outplayed CAG on this opening section of Lijiang Tower, but it was on the other two maps. Anakin was too good, Depp was too good, all of CAG outplaying Xavier.
And that was a really interesting map, I think, the way it all played out, because it did really feel like both teams just got to play the thing that they're largely best at. For Xavier, it's that ghost that goes, I've gone full anime reference with that now. That GOATS composition where they sub out the one member to have a bit more flexibility. And then you saw on the other side of that CAG running that kind of dive tank plus a Pharah. It's kind of their golden go-to. It was the one that won them their quarterfinal yesterday on the last map of Oasis. And the fact that CAG came out the better in this situation, I think is very, very telling and really sets the tone for this series.
And from a mental aspect as well, when you look at the decisions made by Xavier Esports, so much pressure and priority put onto Dip to take him down, shut him down, or at least pressure him out. That does tell me when you get to later maps like Hybrid, Assault, or Escort, where Dip can shine a little bit more onto that Widowmaker. Note that Control is always going to be the worst game mode for a Widowmaker player, and Widowmaker is Dip's best pick. If you're struggling to shut him down into Control, you're going to struggle even more on the other game modes.
Speaking of other game modes, it is where we get to go. Maybe we get to go back to Control if we go the full distance here. And I do think it is somewhat likely. I definitely wouldn't count Xavier out despite that initial loss. Because when you consider of the three, the only one that was a shutout was the one that Xavier won. When they are winning, when they are going well, they're really firing on all cylinders. They're nigh unstoppable. It's just when they're not in that situation, CAG are eking it out.
And I'd like to see this kind of separation playstyle as well. We saw in our other semi-finals, we had Talent Esports and also Monster Shield Korea, both very much favoring that 3-3 GOATS composition, and they kind of were just clashing heads quite a bit. The thing with Cyclops Athlete Gaming is they have a distinct playstyle difference. They don't want to necessarily have to play that. Going into King's Row, Xavier did pick this, and it does say they want to continue playing their GOATS comp. They're good on the ground, they're aggressive, they're decisive, and that's what makes them a good GOATS team. However, CAG have already bested EXL, who wanted to do the same thing. CAG have shown their capability into spamming. They have a great Pharah player. They have a great Widowmaker player. They have the chops to beat any GOATS team, and certainly Xavier have to respect that.
It's the thing they can just fall back onto what's worked for them in the past. EXL's GOATS was once upon a time good enough to beat out Monster Shield Korea's, and Monster Shield Korea just had theirs unfortunately crumble in kind now to Talon. So you start to consider CAG, if they can keep playing in this way, keep countering out what has so far been the best GOATS teams in the tournament, I mean, it gives them mileage, not just in the semi-final, but potentially also in that final after it, if they get there. Let's not count out Xavier just yet, though, because they do have a bit of a deviation, and I think that can still throw a spanner in the works here for CAG if they can play the right flex hero to count out the Pharah.
And that's the thing, that's the X factor for Xavier Esports right now, because they have that flexibility. They have that one member, Patty Pan, who you can just never really expect. What is he going to play? How is he going to counter you? He's got so much. His pockets are so deep. His sleeves have so many cards in them. What's he going to do? We'll find out soon.
Indeed, it feels a lot like composition is king when you come down to these two teams. But the reality is as well, it's execution that changes everything. The composition is only one half of the story. You can play all the right things and just not quite get it done. In fact, you can play the exact same composition as your opponent, and then it is all execution. The team that plays it better is the team that wins.
And I want to add a third half into this discussion as well, a game of three halves, if you like to call it. And that third half has to come into effect, which is to say, match-up knowledge is very, very important right now. When you consider how do you play a certain playstyle against a very opposite playstyle in terms of matchups, that's where it's going to get decided between these two teams. You also saw there the win rates, 5-0 for CAG.
That's very telling, 100% win rate compared to 50% win rate. And that 5-0 means that it's been literally every series CAG played went to King's Row. This is a brave, bold choice from Xavier.
For CAG as well, subbing out Anakin for Tayo, and that's something we expect to see on the hybrid map. We'll see how this young player is able to contend with Xavier right now. Already onto the ground, already losing Samurai.
That's a little rough. They're trying to answer back with killing Queen. They do actually finish him off with the hook to drop the shield, opening him up to the Storm Arrow from Depp, who then headshots out THK. Yeah, a little unfortunate for Sabagod, and they won't be able to res him back, at least not for a while. But Xavier have been pushed back from this initial attack.
There's a couple more members going down as well. Depp and Sabagod now have to take the long way back, and you'll have to think, if you're CAG right now, you want to make sure Xavier do not push in soon. You have to wait for these members to come back, especially because Depp is close to a Dragon Strike, but Tayo is much closer to a Riptire.
Patapan actually went back to base, popped onto a Doomfist. That's given them just enough time to at least get Sabagod back here. Now if they can get Depp in soon enough, they can hold out in this fight. Good hook on Patapan, but no kill. There it goes. Took a moment, but the coalescence on all these members of CAG in this tiny building, they had to pull right back. They catch Thitacorn though with the Taya, and with that they again stem the bleeding. Or I say stem the bleeding. Truly they never actually began bleeding. It's Xavier who are bleeding out.
It's just scratches right now, and Xavier going to need to cut deeper wounds if they'd like to penetrate this defense. Patapan's going to make that attempt, though. He's gone onto the fire, which is a good counter to mostly what CAG are running, but Depp could still have some good angles to land some crazy arrows. Or the self-destruct could land as well.
And it does! Catches Patapan in the skies, catches both the tanks as well. Queen could not quite find the angle on the barrier, unfortunately. They did at least get a third in the push prior, so this isn't too dire yet for Xavier, but 2 minutes remaining. They are starting to run thin on time.
The opportunity was there for Xavier Esports when they got Sabagod down and Depp, but now CAG fully allowed to regroup, whole hog ready to go, supercharger ready to go. You better believe that's a deadly combo.
And with that Valkyrie running, they can pop a damage boost on, and suddenly that just chews through the heroes. However, Supercharger taken out of the picture means the whole hog is just going to have to do the work on its own.
Oh, no hammer!
That's so massive. Pops him up into the air, and that means the hammer, it went up, but it didn't come down. Gravity does not apply. Patapan does counter that one back, though, with a huge rocket barrage. And with that, Xavier will break this point at last. That is whole hogs notwithstanding.
That is a full team wipe, and Xavier Esports had to put so much into it. Queen with the hammer up. Not going to do a lot, but Patapan with the rockets down is exactly what Xavier need. And Cyclops Athlete Gaming going to change up a couple members in this composition. Tayo, Samurai, Kimo Horora, and Sabagod. In fact, Claire as well. Not Claire, the other four. But that's a lot of members, and now Depp makes it 5.
That does give Xavier a big opportunity to win this next fight and make some good space for the payload. If they can do that, they set themselves up nicely on this attack. Tayo swapping again, actually.
Which is a good adaptation. Tayo does notice that Xavier running mostly a ground-based composition outside of Patapan and THK. The Fire should be doing a decent amount of work. With Depp onto the Widowmaker, Patapan has to watch the skies.
And he doesn't have a Mercy as well, which means these shots really stick on Patapan. Indeed, headshots. That's it, it's done, no res. Queen's getting low as well, so if Xavier had to start committing ultimate, start with the Coalescence. THK does have a blade in as well, looking to commit it, wants to get onto Tayo, straight down. Struck out of the air, now onto the back line, does not have the same success. And Samurai picked off as well. They are still trading though, and Xavier keeping this cart moving forward.
This is where Xavier Esports are starting to get an advantage. Earthshatter and Sound Barrier still available. Cyclops Athlete Gaming don't have enough members. The card is nearly at the end of this B section right now, and for Cyclops Athlete Gaming, still waiting to regroup.
Queen just keeping everyone at bay on the side of CAG such that the cart can cap uncontested. And now just under 4 minutes to go. Xavier looking on track to cap out with a not too shabby time, I should say.
We'll see how long they can keep this momentum up though, because they need to get some more ultimates, and CAG are about to respond. Double tank ultimates on their side. Infrasight already into play for Xavier Esports. They are looking to potentially be stopped up here if they're not too careful.
There's nothing that can really stop this chat theoretically. Oh, THK on his back. Gets picked off. There's the double grab out. Neither team can hit each other. They're just squaring off, staring each other down, but Samurai is the first casualty of the double grab there. Now the Earth Shatter is going to make Kenma Hororo the second casualty. The bite back on Thitacorn and Patapan is big though, and Queen unfortunately hits a wall, which means he couldn't get the shield up to support those members. Depp has free reign, Tayo as well, and with that, CAG are going to complete a hold.
And it seems like every single time Xavier about to win a fight, they get their legs into it. Depp responds with a kill or 2 kills. and it's usually enough when he can get these kills. Cyclops at the gaming just getting such a huge advantage. It doesn't matter what ultimate Xavier has, because Depp, it feels like he's always got an ultimate, and I'm not talking about infrared, I'm talking about the headshots.
Dragon Strike comes across the team. Not quite enough to finish anyone off. It buys time to top Samurai off. He was looking dangerously low for a second there. Kenma Hiroro, the headshot out. And now CAG need an answer back quickly, or this payload's going to keep on a-rolling.
You got to look to Depp to make that answer come back. Infrared nearly available. Tyre a little bit low. There it is.
Right,
that is that response. You want to return? Here it is.
Right on time. CHK, though, does have a Dragon Strike, but without Patapan, they maybe have to consider they can't take this fight.
Too many members going down now for Xavier Esports. 2 minutes remaining as well. That card distance is very decent for Xavier, though. So in terms of pressure, you're absolutely right. Good pressure on both sides. Cyclops at the game and getting a lot of picks, but Xavier Esports getting a lot of push. That is the equalizer, though, in terms of time, 150. Xavier have been fully reset.
There's plenty of time to push it over the line, and Xavier aren't exactly that behind in the macro game. Indeed, they're almost running even to CAG. They've got some high-impact tools coming up here as well. This Dragon Strike connects, it's all over for CAG.
Waiting for Siege and got to get the grab as well. You want to see the combo come into play for this to really, really work. But how long does it take for CAG to get a response skill? Pretty quick so far based on history.
Samurai goes in with the Earth Shatter. Claire's got the opening kill amazingly. The pistol, never discounted. Running up with that Valkyrie as well. Depp trying to find angles. He's stuck in a grab. Does go down to the charge. Unfortunately, though, that Dragon Strike didn't quite get the mileage they needed. But Queen still... That one pick on Depp has created an opportunity, but it's not one that's been capitalized on, as now the counterattack comes in. And this is just the same thing, history repeating itself over and over.
And even when you catch Depp, he gets caught inside that Graviton Surge, charged out by Queen. Cyclops after the game, and Claire, he gets that Resurrection into play. Kimmo Hororo counters with his Graviton Surge. A late Dragon Strike is still a good one from Tayo. Catches Queen out, and then Depp, of course, the headshots. How, of course, that he never doesn't get those, basically.
And when you consider THK had his own Dragon Strike, now they've had to completely change that up. It's not working. They're back to the goats, a full goats. They're all on their backs. The goats are fainting goats, as it turns out. CAG going to clean that one up without too much trouble. And now 20 seconds left. It's not looking so good for Xavier.
They're still getting staggered out as well. This is going to be Panapan very late in terms of respawning. You really need all 6 members if you're Xavier right now, because you don't have any ultimates to play with. It's just player kills. It's just damage they have to rely on.
Oh, and they're all stuck in a grab. It's going to have to be around the side. Tay trying to dash for it, but he doesn't get there. They're expecting it, and with that, CAG will complete a hold. Now they only need to cap the map, not even quite that, and they push it to match point if they can do it.
It's all going to come down to that Xavier defense. How good is it going to be? How much time can they shave off? Is it going to be an A hold, potentially? Is it going to be a B hold? Is it going to go all the way to C? Because if it does, and it does go to the 3rd point, you expect Cyclops Athlete Gaming to cap that one out, to finish the map, to get that 2-0, to go to match point.
This is now a bit of a tricky situation for Xavier. Really did look like they would actually have enough time, just under 4 minutes as they capped out C. Just about 2 minutes as they got the carts, where you see it right about now. They couldn't quite get that last fight in. CAG drew a line in the sand and said no more.
I want to say that line in the sand was drawn at several stages across that entire defense. On that A defense, you saw so many times they rebuffed that attack. On that B defense, they slowed down that push significantly. And then finally onto that 3rd point as well, they made sure that the push was completed, or rather was ended. Finally for the last time. Now all they got to do is make that final distance 56.91 meters for that map completion, for that victory completion.
It's very achievable, especially when you consider CAG already did it on the Zhang Tower. And they're the team coming into this with a 100% win rate. They cap this map out constantly. Xavier really had their work cut out for them on the defense. Even if they lose it though, not the end of the world. They don't lose just yet. They keep their hopes alive potentially. They can still turn it back around, but they would be in that situation where they have to reverse sweep. So you don't want to get into that tight spot in the first place. That means they are going to have to make make a defense work.
Now, this is Cyclops Athlete Gaming, by the way, making a very nice adaptation. They're expecting the ground-based composition to come out. They're expecting the pseudo-goats. Patapan's the only one that can really challenge Tayo, who is himself now going to be starting out onto the Pharah. Let's see how he does compared to Anakin.
In the past, when they've run this Pharah, it has paid off for them just in general, because if you can let it have that time to work with, it does chip away at those tanks. It makes it possible to finish them off, especially with someone like Depp collecting headshots. And there it is. Thittercorn is the first casualty, and now THK to follow. Depp just absolutely popping off. Patapan, though, trades it back. It's not all smooth sailing for CAG.
There are more picks coming up from CAG right now, and they will get the closer respawns, so they do have that to work with. As long as CAG can continue pushing forward, Depp gets res back in as well. Look at the positioning of Xavier. They're already out of the point. They've been completely pushed off.
The real thing that hurt them was it was Tay and Thittercorn getting picked first. No healers meant all that damage sticks, and Xavier had to cede the space. And now as they come back in, they're not even doing so at a numbers advantage. Depp is still chipping away at these members, headshot after headshot. They've had to make a change to a Pharah of their own, but it's certainly not going to be enough to rescue this point. It's just going to have to be for the streets phase, because the cart belongs to CAG.
When you're playing against a player like Depp onto the Widowmaker, it feels like a ticking time bomb. It's an inevitability. When players go down, you feel like you're constantly at a player disadvantage, and with Xavier still continuously losing members, THK feeling like he needs to challenge Depp, which is a tall order indeed for Xavier. They need to be able to regroup quickly and set up a defense onto B.
Now CAG, they've got a lot coming up off cooldown. They have charged up, banked up 5 just about ultimates. And that means they should be able to get a lot of momentum here, set a stellar time.
Sneaky Shatter not going to be available for Cyclops Athlete Gaming. Some rider was caught out there, but caught out is also Tayo.
They do commit the res, they get him back in, which is critical as they rain down the rockets on top of the Graviton Surge. Xavier not going to get anything back in that fight except the one catch on Depp, but it's going to get answered back in its own right very quickly.
Saber got even onto THK as well. The Zenyatta's fragging out for Cyclops Athlete Gaming. Nearly at that terminal for the B point, nearly onto C, and if they get onto that third point, you'd expect them to be able to finish the map. They got a lot of time to play with, and Xavier do not have a lot of distance left to defend.
Earth Shatter in, counted out by Queen though. Thittercorn does still go down, but they start to bite back thanks to that nano boost, thanks to the damage in, but the cap went over in the midst of the chaos, and that means even if they hold out here, essentially they've lost that fight in one regard, Xavier, and they do still lose a lot of members in the process.
This is now Cyclops Athlete Gaming looking for more members. Depp even onto the Tracer right now. THK having no luck. Kemba Horora being rezzed back in. Now there are ultimates available for Xavier Esports, but they need to be able to commitment. Look at where that cart positioning is. Just under 5 minutes and not a lot of distance to go.
CAG are really just keeping this fight going. They didn't actually give Xavier time enough to reset, to stay on the cart. They recognized the opportunity. They dive on forward, and now they're just keeping that momentum going.
Pulse Bomb nearly available. And for Cyclops Athlete Gaming, Tayo now is going to jump onto that Widowmaker. These players are so versatile in what they can play. It feels like they've got everybody on at the same time. 7 members of the roster playing right now, if that's even possible. Xavier Esports still opportunity. Where is this rocket barrage that has to be the weapon?
Oh man, there it is, finally on top of Savagard, but immediately answered back again. And then Teo picks THK. Now the Graviton to come in, the Pulse Bomb layered on top. CAG, this could be the final fight unless Xavier gets something big, but with Queen dead, it's the only ultimate that they could have played with. And still, Teo gets kills when it's not Depp, it's Teo on the Widowmaker. These two have completely swapped over, but you couldn't tell for how excellent they both are at those heroes. Now last gasp for Xavier. Can they stop the cart at all?
The same is true for Depp and Teo and also onto Amakin.
That's it. It's got to be. That was the last thing that they could have used. And he didn't even get a chance to use it. CAG continuing the 100% win rate on Kings Row. And now 2-0 up. They take it to match point. They are hungry for that final.
I gotta say, I'm very pleased about how much versatility is being shown by these players. You look at Tayo, you think, okay, Amakin's usually the Pharah player here. Depp is usually the Widowmaker player here. It doesn't even quite matter. Tayo can play it all. He jumps onto the Pharah, makes it work, makes it very valuable, jumps onto the Widowmaker, lands the shots he needs to, and Depp onto the Tracer equally as deadly.
That was That was a bit tough, I have to say, for Xavier. When you look at how Lee Zhengtao went, it really felt like there was some comparability between the two teams. Certainly it felt like Xavier could have done it even though they didn't. And a lot of that is off the back of how Control Center went. But now we're starting to see, doesn't really matter what they're running, even when they're running that team comp, that pseudo goats, that goats in the shell, whatever we want to call it, where you have that one flex player in. That's been their best thing to run so far. It's what's given them the most success, and that's not working against CAG. Things start to look really rough for them now because you wonder, do they have any other tricks up their sleeve? Do they have anything else in their repertoire that could maybe turn it back around?
And turn it back around is exactly what they need to be able to do. We are going to take a short break, and when we come back, it will be the conclusion to our second semi-final here between CAG and Xavier Esports. Who's it going to be? Find out after the break.